Hello, everyone. Welcome into the hospitality room presented by Mascot Media. We're in person.
Who knew that we actually could be in the same room and do a podcast?
Yes.
What a novel idea.
This is insane, and this is different because we have two monitors.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the big monitor, which is why it looks like we're looking over, but the camera's on this one.
Yeah.
So what brings you to town?
I had to talk to the head of our website, which is this guy.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not the head of the website.
Yeah,
Don't give me that kind of credit.
No, Mascot Media, which is obviously the sponsor of this podcast.
Yes.
Provides this podcast. Also provides the website for the Arkansas Activity Association. So
More importantly.
sometimes I like to come in person, make them take me to lunch, and we can talk about all the problems or non-problems like
yes.
we didn't have.
And a good lunch it was.
It was, indeed. So shout out to Brad Blue and Miss Jen for providing said lunch.
Yes, indeed. Oh, we have a lot to talk about today. Let's get right to it. NFL recap and what can you say?
Philadelphia just scored again.
Oh, yeah, Saquon Barkley just went by like Fred Talia at Auburn. I don't know. Everyone hoped the Cinderella story would continue. Mm-hmm. And it came to a crashing halt.
Yeah. Apparently, turnovers matter in the playoffs.
Shocking.
Turnovers deep in your own territory are detrimental to winning football games in the playoffs, especially when you do it three times. Mm-hmm. And Washington looked like the team we probably expected them to look like for most of the season.
Yes.
A team that wasn't very good last year, wasn't very disciplined, made mistakes, and gave games away. The problem is they hadn't done that really all season long, and then all of a sudden the biggest stage of the season happens, and then all of a sudden they fall flat on their face. The three turnovers were obviously huge fumbles. You thought the rookie quarterback would be the reason why that they struggled, but it really wasn't him. I mean, Austin Eckler puts it on the ground. Special teams puts the ball on the ground. And obviously Philadelphia with the running game is playing really, really well. Can't give them extra opportunities. But then as Jalen Hurts, his own words, they let him take the straitjacket off for a little bit. And the passing game for Philadelphia looked pretty good. Honestly, I mean, if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you're feeling pretty good about your chances in the Super Bowl because they had it all working in that championship.
Oh, yeah. Well, how many times do we see it in the postseason? A running game is so important. Mm-hmm. And then Saquon, first touch, boom, 60 yards.
And we don't see that a lot in the NFL anymore. As those big, long touchdown runs or the big plays have always been in the passing game. But Philadelphia with Barkley this year has shown if you break away that first wave because teams are trying to stack the box, I mean he's gonna bring it to the house. He did it time and time again against the Rams. Obviously, had some big plays against the Commanders. I mean, it's scary what they can do, and then you add the threat of the play action passing game, and if Hurts can push the ball down the field to those two playmakers they've got on the outside. I mean, it's scary. I mean, it's Philadelphia for all the warts that Sirianni has, their coach. They look like a really, really, really good team that has a legitimate chance of winning a championship.
Yes, and Howie Roseman, their general manager, does a phenomenal job of acquiring talent. They probably have the best talent in the league.
Well, honest. I mean, they built their defense like you're supposed to. They did it in the draft. It just so happens that most of those guys went to the same college, and everybody's always asking, why are you drafting all these Georgia guys that'll never work?
There's a reason.
It's working pretty good. I mean, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter in the middle. I mean, it's unreal. Not only the holes that they can plug, but the athleticism and the speed they get to make plays on the outside. I mean, they're tracking down Jaden Daniels from behind, and nobody's been able to do that this year. Yeah. And Philadelphia's got defensive tackles who are doing it. That's going to be a problem for Kansas City, and we'll talk more about the actual Super Bowl next week. But I mean, that's a problem for most teams. But Mahomes is mobile, but he's not Jaden Daniels mobile. No. So they're going to have to shore things up front. Obviously, Kansas City's got a good offensive line, but I mean they're going to have to play a great game to slow that Philly front. Yeah,
I mean Washington needs more dudes. Yeah, they've got cap room. They've got an opportunity to do something about that. So they'll get going. And then the nightcap, Chiefs Bills. Yeah, and I don't know what it. I mean, everyone's busting Allen. I mean, he played a hell of a ball game.
How much more can you ask him to do?
I don't know that you can. I mean, you think what he's doing it with. James Cook, I mean, they didn't give him the ball enough down the stretch. His receiving core, I mean.
It's a who's of nobody.
Yeah. I mean, can you name three people? Shakir's a great possession receiver. Mm-hmm. Amari Cooper. Disappeared. Yeah. And you can't name anybody else. I mean. Yeah. The tight end, Kincaid. Maybe should have caught it, but those things happen.
Yeah.
it's almost mental at this point, you think.
It is. I mean, so if you would have told Buffalo going into the game, hey, you're going to score 29 points
You take
against a team that hasn't scored 30 points all season, you're like, oh, yeah, give it to us. We'll take it. We'll go to the Super Bowl. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, what more can you ask Josh Allen to do? Doesn't turn the football over. Obviously, hindsight's 20/20, and if he flips the swing pass out to Shakir, he maybe still be running on that fourth down play that can make the catch because there's nobody over there. But I mean, honestly, what Kansas City's defense is able to do at times, and they gave up 29 points, the second most they've given up all season. You've got the one Denver game that you can really throw out the window, but the only time they gave up 30 all year was to Buffalo the first time, and so he just sent the house. He says, all right, they're going to get some points, but he blitzed them, and in the biggest moment, everybody knew that they were sending the house. They had a free rusher. Josh Allen had to rush things. It's amazing he got the throw off in the first place. But I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, did Buffalo have a fumble, but the turnover margin was it was even, or is even -1 for Kansas City?
I think -1 for Kansas City.
Mahomes and they dropped the option read or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was lined up for Buffalo to win the game. Yet Kansas City still had just enough to get it done.
If they score on the opening possession instead of kick the field goal, it feels a lot different.
Yeah.
I think. And credit Spags.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times does a defensive coordinator send the house on a fourth down like that and on a third down? Usually they're playing prevent defense and the team just marches right down the field. Man, he's going to bring it to you and force you to make a play. And I think what makes it even more effective is you never see that with the pressure on, and that just, I mean, the pressure was already there, and then you amp it up. Yeah. Hey, force them to make a play, and if they make it, they beat you, tip of their hat.
And obviously, a lot of people have talked about the 4th and 1 that was or wasn't a conversion.
I thought he got the first down,
it looked like it. I mean, but when you have that many bodies, I'm not going to sit here and say, they got it so wrong.
Yeah.
You got to overhaul the system. You got to scrum. But my problem with that wasn't with the officials. It was with Buffalo repeatedly doing something that really wasn't working.
Yes.
They tried the tush push or whatever you want to call it 3 other times and got maybe 2 total yards out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you got Chris Jones like Kansas City does, you can stack that up pretty good. Why not spread it out and just give Josh Allen the option to run
an RPO?
Yeah, just go RPO or even a straight quarterback draw from the shotgun. You got a running start, less bodies in the box. To me, other than Philadelphia, teams don't run that as effectively, and Buffalo really struggled to run it. I'm surprised they kept going back to it over and over because it was a struggle to get first downs when they did convert them because they weren't moving the pile 4 or 5 yards like we've seen other teams do. I thought it was really poor adjustments by Buffalo to continue to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just Kansas City just does enough, which is all you're supposed to do anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, how this house, maybe because he doesn't want to, the fact that Spags hasn't got another chance to be a head coach.
Insane. It's insane. And we'll talk about head coaches next. In fact, we'll get to that in our topics. But first, we'll talk a little basketball. Arkansas. I know. We'll make it quick.
Yeah.
1-6 in conference play.
Yeah.
Calipari's worst season was 9-16, and they've surpassed it in wins. But, I mean, that may be their conference record.
Yeah, I mean they're a team that can't score, but also cannot get many stops.
No,
which is a bad combination. I mean, they're 1-6, but they're overall plus minus. Take away the Tennessee games, probably in close to single digits. They haven't been blown out in a lot of games. I mean, they're a team that is really a score or 2 away from being competitive in the SEC. Problem is you can't just go out and get those in the middle of the season.
No.
Boogie Fland obviously out for the year. That's a problem. Maybe that creates something that Nelly Davis running the point again. He goes back to more his FAU type, and then rather what Arkansas fans have seen his as a Razorback. But I mean, to me, they don't make plays. The Oklahoma game, it was just 2 average teams. The play at the ends. I mean, you get Nelly Davis going to the basket, looking like a
which is
one-on-one,
what you want.
But he wasn't tough enough with the basketball.
Yeah, that was
to go up, and you don't really get a good shot at it.
Yeah.
I don't.
And he had Wagner open on the wing.
Yeah, it's to me, it's just a discombobulated team that's average. I mean, obviously they're 1-6 in conference, which tells you they're a bad team. But Arkansas is not a bad team.
No,
it's just the conference is really good, and you've got to make critical plays, and Arkansas is not making any of those.
No, they've had a lot of injuries. You can tell they don't scrimmage 5-on-5. I don't know what they do in practice, but the chemistry's not there, and it's just let's talk football again. Or actually, first, where's Nolan's statue?
Yeah.
He's the only championship coach on that campus that doesn't have a statue. Mm-hmm. Maybe that will break the curse.
Yeah, I mean, would it though? I mean, the court's already named after him. The Slobbering Hog's back on the
floor.
But
he deserves a statue.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all.
He needs to see it because, unfortunately, Coach is not getting any younger. Yeah. So it would be great to see
rather than later. But then, of course, the question now is, of course, every extra dime has to go to NIL. Can you waste the money? Waste the money is probably not the right term, but can you use the money to build a statue instead of giving that to a player that might help the team?
They could get the money to get the statue.
You would think so.
Make it happen. All right, now we'll talk football. We'll review the coaching hires. Ben Johnson, Bears.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, you know, what he doesn't have in Chicago now, what he had in Detroit was an established quarterback, big-time playmakers at receiver, a big-time running back. Now he's going to have to see how good is that offense with average players. I'm not saying Caleb Williams can't be a really good player, but, you know, Keenan Allen, after a bad year, is now a year older. Mm-hmm. Chicago's got some decent players, but does that translate? Because the offensive line is really bad. I mean, you're talking about the second most sacks in the NFL that Chicago gave up this year. To me, it makes a lot of sense for Ben Johnson, but now he is now on the worst team in the best division in football.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay that you've got to play twice a year. So that's 6 games that you have to win. And if you get to 500 against those 3 teams as the Bears, it's a great year.
It's interesting. Okay, you bring him in for his offense, but you also want him to be your head coach. So he's going to have to wear 2 hats. Never been a head coach before. In that division, boy, that's asking a lot of a rookie head coach.
I mean, you got to make sure that you hit a home run with your defensive coordinator and your special teams coordinator because you don't have time to worry about the 2 sides of the ball. I think teams that are successful, a.k.a. coaches that are successful, who also call plays and do that, have zero responsibility on the other sides. Like, okay, I'm the offense, you're the head coach of the defense, you handle that. Come to me if you need to call a timeout. Other than that, you're in charge.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The next hire we'll review, Aaron Glenn, also from Detroit. Yeah. So Dan Campbell's got to rebuild. Going to the Jets with the new GM as well. I kind of like this hire. I think this is a good one.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, he played there. I mean, he was a good defensive back there. I thought here or New Orleans was going to be the landing spot for Glenn. It was a disaster of an interview process. I mean, they were interviewing pretty much everybody, but they finally got Glenn, probably gave him the number that he wanted. But what the Jets are going to have a problem, and I read a story about their interim coach, who's now the defensive coordinator for Atlanta.
Yes.
He says they didn't have people who told the truth. Not that they were lying. Is like they said.
The
sometimes you need people in your meeting rooms, in your locker room, to come and say, "Hey, this doesn't work," or "This isn't working. Let's do this." And he said that didn't happen enough with the Jets. People weren't going to the office and say, "Hey, this is not working. Let's try Plan B or Plan C." And he said he took some fault to it as well. Said, "Hey, when I was named interim coach, I should have handed off the defense to somebody else.
Yeah.
I was trying to do too much." It's a disaster. It starts with Aaron Rodgers. So no matter what they do, and more than likely they're going to cut him because it's going to save $30 million, he is a $65 million cap hit next year in 2026. 35 this year, $65 million next year, no matter what.
Really?
So they're in a tough situation based on a player who's not going to be available for
them. That makes it really tough. Plus, you have an owner that, I mean, we've heard the stories, cutting people, didn't trade for
Courtland Sutton because it was Madden rating.
Yeah, which I don't know. It's bizarre. It's the Jets. All right, Jaguars, Liam Cohen, and this whole thing was bizarre.
I've never seen a situation where coaches were turning down the job because of the general manager.
Yeah.
It literally took firing the GM to get him to take the job.
Which was not surprising, but
the whole waffle.
But you knew that going in if you'd listened to anybody. Right. Nobody wanted to interview for that job because of the GM. And this would have been his, 4th coach to hire?
Yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense, and it's a really bad look for Cohen that he gets the big extension, the highest paid coordinator in the NFL from Tampa, and all of a sudden the next day he's
ghosting them.
He doesn't take their phone call, but all of a sudden he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to go back to the Jaguars."
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm at the doctor with the sick kid.
Yeah.
Calls. Yeah. I mean, it was just, and the press conference wasn't good. Yeah, I mean, it's the Jaguars. There's a reason that they're the Jaguars. And then it brings us to this. The Cowboys. And you know it's bad when Jerry Jones, who is the king of marketing, drops the hire on a Friday night at 9 or 10 o'clock.
The news dump.
Yeah.
It's really hard to lose on a weekend that you don't play. The Cowboys did it during championship weekend.
Totally.
It's been 30 years now, 95, since the Cowboys played in the NFC Championship game, and they still found a way to lose this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you think about when the whole McCarthy thing went down, and then the talk of Dion, and that's all anybody talked about after the first weekend of the playoffs. And then, as you mentioned, divisional weekend, nothing on the Cowboys.
After that performance, I mean, granted, they hired Schottenheimer on Friday or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
After that performance on Sunday, I don't know how Jerry Jones says, no, just kidding, that was an early April Fool's joke, we're hiring Kellen Moore. I don't get it. I mean, Kellen Moore's probably going to get the Saints job now, which is a better job than the Cowboys at this juncture. Don't have a better quarterback, but a better job overall. The Cowboys fluffed it up. There's only no way to sugarcoat it.
Well, it's just, and here's the thing too. One, I think they thought McCarthy was coming back. They had to have, because you could have made this move 6 weeks left in the season, because Schottenheimer's in house, the OC who never calls plays. I mean, I don't know. Why would you deny the Bears the chance to interview McCarthy if you didn't think he was coming back?
Yeah, that's the whole thing that's shocking. And, and he's not going to take the New Orleans job now. He's backed out of that.
Yeah.
So he's just going to focus on 2026. What the Jaguars did is, the Cowboys essentially did the same thing. They screwed up a situation. They took a situation in which they could have said, hey, here's all the money in the world for Ben Johnson. Come coach Dak, come coach CeeDee Lamb. We're going to go out and make some moves and get some guys in the offseason. And instead, they have to promote, as you just said, an offensive coordinator who didn't even call the plays.
Yeah.
A 50-year-old assistant who's never done anything in the NFL.
A guy down the hall who nobody was calling to interview. Yeah. And, just the whole McCarthy thing, you didn't interview any serious candidates. They're tweeting all it was just totally bizarre, to say the least. The Raiders hired Pete Carroll. The Raiders are a mess. Tom Brady, how much influence he has, I don't know. But I kind of like this hire.
Yeah, for where they are as a franchise and an organization, it actually makes a little bit of sense. They're going to have huge question mark at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Do they address that in the draft? Do they do it during free agency? That's going to really dictate what happens with Vegas in the next year or two. And so why not? He's going to be a short gap. If he's there longer than 3 years, it's going to be a shock. Yeah. And that may be his choice. He may do it for a year or two. You see it on the screen, 73 years old.
Yeah, but young 73.
Yeah, this is not a young man's game. He was hobbling around that facility. I saw the video. He's not moving very well.
Okay.
But, for an organization that's been as dysfunctional as they are, at least it brings a little continuity and a little respectability, I guess, to the position of head coach of the Raiders, because it's kind of been a joke in recent years.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, too. Now, with Brady involved, he's got ties to the GM. Mm-hmm. How much influence he's going to have, and how long is he going to stay active? Because Mark Davis, stability is not his thing.
Yeah.
So this could be interesting. It sets the foundation at least.
Yeah, and how much influence and decision-making about the quarterback position does Brady have?
Yeah.
He played the position better than anybody who's ever done it. Doesn't mean he can scout it and evaluate it and to decide what's best for this team. I'm curious. Because obviously they've got some options in free agency if they want to go that route. Sam Darnold, either one of the Pittsburgh quarterbacks. Maybe Kirk Cousins is out there. Maybe thinking another year, healed from that Achilles, he's better. But then again, you've got the draft. But the draft is so unpredictable this year at the top because Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, some people think are going to be the next Tom Brady, but some people think they're going to be out of the league in 3 years. There's no clear-cut, this is the great quarterback. Last year we thought, there's three really good ones. At the top, they went 1, 2, 3. Both of these quarterbacks couldn't be slide out of the top 5, to kind of depending on a trade or two or some team's philosophies.
The better quarterbacks are probably in the free agent market. Yeah. So, and the Raiders are not a 1 year away team either. Yeah. So,
and outside of the tight ends, they don't have a lot of weapons.
No. It's kind of amazing Bowers did what he did. Yeah. Given the quarterbacks he had, makes you wonder what could do with a real quarterback. So,
I completely agree.
Be real interesting. All right, our next one, the Saints. Kellen Moore would appear is going to be the guy. Because McCarthy pulled out, so obviously he knows something. And he has ties believe it or not, to that organization.
I mean, it's essentially now Kellen Moore or nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no other names out there that are floating as like, oh, this is who the Saints are going to get. They're just waiting for the Eagles to finish their season.
Yeah, which is it's still odd because you still would have thought Kellen Moore, formerly in Dallas. I mean, I just figured they would wait it out.
No-brainer.
Well, what's the hurry to hire a head coach right now anyway?
Yeah. Other than not having a staff at the Senior Bowl, it gives you no advantage of having a coach now compared to 3 weeks from now.
Or is it possible that Kellen Moore's people told Jerry, though he did interview with him, I thought.
He did, yeah.
Maybe he didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and also the Cowboys may be looking for a yes man. Maybe Kellen Moore came in and said, hey, I need to do this, this, and this. And Jerry says, I'm not willing to give up those powers.
Well, he knew he knows how they run.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting to see. You mentioned the Senior Bowl. That's where everybody is. We're seeing a lot of coordinators. Eberflus has ended up in Dallas. Coordinators jumping around all over the place. Man, I mean, it's the NFL. Still, we have Super Bowl coming up, but it's like the coaching carousel has. I mean, teams are tweeting when they interview for a coordinator position. I don't ever recall that before.
It's the transparency. I mean, the Rooney Rule effect is this has been a trickle down of it. You have to be transparent about who you interview, and I think it caters to the fans. I mean, you're starting to see. We've talked about it before. The NFL schedule is year round.
Yes.
It's not by coincidence that the Senior Bowl is the 1 week they don't have a game this week, because people like me whose team have been out of the hunt for a long time, we're now focused on scouts. Yeah. Before we started, I'm sitting here watching on my phone, watching one-on-one pass block drills against the defensive ends. I mean, so there's 30 teams out there who are already focused on next year, and so hey, let's put our biggest showcase of incoming college players the week before the Super Bowl because people want it.
Yeah, and you mentioned coordinators. Josh McDaniels headed back to New England. Is Vrabel going to call the defense? Or is he named to D.C.?
Yeah, so he hired the guy that was with him at Tennessee, who was assistant head coach and D-line coach. Terry
That's right. Yeah, for the Lions.
He spent the last year at the Lions, and in everything that you've seen about him, he's never been a defensive coordinator. But, Vrabel's going to have the input on the defense, but this guy's nasty. Apparently, he teaches nasty, all about defensive line. Obviously, the defensive front for Detroit before the injuries was really, really good. They've got a lot of assistants back that were Tennessee. I like the staff that they've been able to put together. Obviously, McDaniels is going to have complete control of the offense. I mentioned, those first-year head coaches that are calling plays. They need somebody to control the other side of the ball. I mean, this kind of feels like the Belichick, McDaniels teams of old. Belichick handled the defense, and who those assistants were, and McDaniels and Brady handled the offense. It kind of feels like that's going to be the separation of this, which I don't think is a bad thing in today's football.
No, I think that helps to have experienced coordinators, because that's the thing with these first-year head coaches. They don't have the knowledge of a guy that's been in the league as long as Vrabel has, or a Pete Carroll. And when it comes to hiring staff, and let's face it, the first-year head coaches need as good a staff as possible because they're still learning on the job.
I mean, so the big thing now is the Senior Bowl, and then we'll go through the Super Bowl, and then free agency is going to hit, first week of March.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of downtime. You got the combine thrown in there, but I mean, there's a lot of teams, New England included, that have a ton of money in free agency. So New England's got 120. There's a couple other teams that have 90 plus. There's going to be a lot of moving parts, and I think that we're starting to see teams aren't afraid to make trades anymore.
No.
Draft picks don't have quite the value that they used to. Like you would never ever trade a draft pick. I think we're going to see some big names because maybe not T.J. Watt like I read this morning, who's got a year left on his contract, but guys like D.K. Metcalf, who's got a year left that have an expensive price tag,
but can make an impact.
Yeah, but exactly, help a young quarterback or help a team get over the hump. I think we're going to start to see some bigger names moved because of things like that. But it's going to be fun. I mean, I love I probably love the offseason as much as I love the season.
Oh, it's going to be great. I mean, okay, the Lions, you use your D-line coach, you lose both coordinators. It appears they're going to promote from in-house. I mean, that's a lot to overcome.
I mean, they've got a loaded roster that was really, really banged up, especially defensively. But now you mentioned it. You're losing your D-line coach. You're losing your D coordinator. And there's no telling what Glenn's going to take as far as assistants.
And you still may get poached.
Yeah, and New England may pick some of those assistants.
In Chicago, Johnson might take some.
You're Dan Campbell and Jared Goff and all those big names that we go through the list, but nobody else is the same. And granted, the NFL, that's how the NFL's built, though. There's so much turnover. Detroit had every team outside of New England for 20 years and now Kansas City for the last decade, has a window. And can Detroit take advantage of their window? Pittsburgh missed theirs. You know, and we've seen a lot of teams miss their windows.
Yeah, and the windows are small.
San Francisco has now missed their window.
Yes.
When McCaffrey and Debo are younger and healthy. So now Philadelphia is in their window. They've been in the Super Bowl twice now, and was this 3 or 4 years? Can they win a championship? Why they've got that window. So
same with Kansas City, and they're closer to the window probably ending than beginning. Back to the Cowboys. Their coaching search reminded me a lot of the last 2 Razorback football coaching head searches, which just left, you know, you'd hear the big name, and then you end up with the guy, and you're like, what? Which makes me just think Jerry Jones was heavily involved in the last 2 coaching searches.
That's probably true. That's a good comparison because, I mean, because you think as a Cowboys fan, you're always going to shoot for the moon.
Oh, yeah.
If you're an Arkansas Razorback fan, you're like, oh, we're going to go get John Gruden. Like that's all we ever heard. Like all the big flashy names, the sexy names, and all of a sudden you got to settle for Mike McCarthy or Chad Morris. And you know, they hit the home run with Brett Bielema, then they didn't give him a long enough chance to get it done because he was 2 second-half collapses from going 9-4 1 year.
Well, and you end up with Sam Pittman.
Yeah. I mean, it's so...
Who no one saw coming.
Exactly. It is funny how similar the two are because a lot of times the fan base are the exact same. Cowboy fans are Razorback fans and vice versa. It's tough. Life is not easy on you. I understand that. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Gruden. I thought he might get some play in Dallas. Nothing.
He's making a fortune from Barstool. Why?
That's true.
Stress yourself out.
Yeah, he's running plays with them in a gym. But yeah, that was just, I don't know, it was just really surprising that he didn't come up. I mean, and that's the thing too, there's not a plethora of coaching candidates out there.
I mean, a lot of them are rehashes. You're either the young up-and-coming coordinator or you're a rehash. I mean, that's why Pete Carroll's getting hired, you know, at 73-year-olds with the Raiders. I mean, we are starting to see former big-name players get the opportunity in college. If those are successful on a grand scale, and by successful, and you got to do a whole lot more than Deion's done other than be a figurehead.
Yeah.
You got to go out and win games, win championships. But I mean, you're starting to see, was it Norfolk State, and you know Eddie George is the head coach, and he got an interview I think it was with the Bears.
Yeah.
You know, Jason Witten's obviously a successful high school coach, and he got a call, just probably a courtesy call there for Jerry Jones. But I think we're going to start to see some of more former players get into coaching. You know, Aaron Glenn, Gerard Mayo, Mike McVrabel. I mean, the list, I mean, it's already there, but I think we're really going to start to see more and more of that.
Guys that know football. It totally makes sense. I had a question, and it just went away like that. Shoot. What was it? I'm trying to think. I knew I should have written it down. Totally on me. But as we go under 3, we'll go ahead and put the graphic up for the channels to find us. If you like the show, subscribe to us right there on YouTube. Hit subscribe and like. We'd greatly appreciate that as we're trying to start something new, and I keep hoping this thought's going to come back to me.
We're normally 3 hours apart from each other.
Yeah,
so being in the same room is a little different. I'm used to staring at your little box.
Yeah, it's
on my laptop.
It's kind of unusual, and I usually have my notes here, and I'm doing this, and of course it'll come to me after we sign off. But I know you mentioned the quarterbacks. What the Vikings do with Sam Darnold, I think,
it's the first domino.
The first domino on the quarterback deal. I mean, everybody's Shador, Cam Ward, Jason Dart apparently turning some heads at Senior Bowl. But it's like the portal.
Yeah.
You'd rather have a guy with experience than trying to bet on a rookie because, let's face it, the teams drafting quarterbacks are not good teams, and that's a lot to ask of a rookie to come in and change your fortunes, though everybody is hoping the guy is going to be the next Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, free agency is going to dictate what happens with the draft. Because that's going to happen first. I mean, so you've got teams at the top, the Giants, the Titans, the Raiders, I mean, a handful of others that need obvious help at quarterback, but do they address that need in free agency? Like, so if you're the Raiders and all of a sudden you shell out some money for Sam Darnold, maybe it's only a 2-year deal, but it's front-loaded. It's like, okay, we're going to give you played real well last year, you fell on your face late in the year, and then the last game of the regular season in the playoff, but we're going to give you a chance to duplicate that. And so maybe a short deal, but so you're not going to burn a draft pick on a quarterback then. You look at, Kirk Cousins is going to be out there. for a team that maybe is closer than you might think to winning a championship, or at least competing. Maybe a team like
it's good for 8 weeks.
The win now mentality. Maybe the Jets think they thought they had a window. They've never really had a window.
Well, where's Aaron Rodgers?
I think Aaron Rodgers is going to retire.
You think so?
I don't think anybody else is going to blow the salary cap to bring him in, and the Jets aren't going to keep him. At least they can't keep him on the current salary. And what's the point of spending even more money on a guy who's costing you $30 to $65 million over the next 2 years against the cap? But I mean, you've got the two quarterbacks at Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson and Fields. I mean, so there's a lot of dominoes that are going to fall that certainly could affect the top of the draft, which means there could be more trade at the top of the draft, and you just never know what's going to happen.
If you're the Vikings, what do you do with Darnold? Franchise tag him or let him walk?
I would probably put the transition tag on him. If somebody else wants to come pay you, then you get a little compensation because, I mean, let's be real. I mean, he was good. I know we're running out of time, but you can have a rookie fall on their face in the first round of the playoffs too.
True. Final word?
It's good to see you, Blair.
Good to see you.